I would say the small local pigeons are much better.
Kamusta mga par? Steady bird lang tayo ulit at manood ng part 2 ng interview natin kay Charles Dickson. At kung hindi nyo pa papanood yung part 1, baka naman.
Tumda ka.
Oh no! Malaki pa sa akin yung aso.
Hindi, mas malaki ka pa rin.
At ayan na si Charles. Tara, patugo tayo ng ilong.
Oh no!
Aba, teka. Atsara muna pala guys.
Damdaming para sa'yo, nais ko sana pakiusap.
Charles, you talked about roundabout system. Can you explain a bit more of that?
Yeah, certainly. I'm basically copied from what we did in UK. I keep the pigeons separate. I let them pair up. I let them go down on eggs, maybe even rear a young bird. So it ties them to the loft. Then once the about a week old young birds, or even just the eggs and they come off the nest, I'll separate them. And I'll keep them separated for a few weeks, and then I'll start training them. But I'll let the cocks, if I road train them, I'll let the cocks go first. Carla, my wife, gets them in, the cocks in. 12 minutes later, I let the hens go, and she gets them in. So they're always separated. They never get to see each other. And then when it comes to the club training, I usually don't start straight away. After, once they get out to about 80 kilometers, then I'll start training them. So all week they're separated. But on a Friday night, I put bowls into where the cocks are, and I just let the hens go through it. And it's a bit of a chaos rather than full-on roundabout. So I let the hens go through the cocks. They'll sit and play, they'll chase each other for about half an hour, then I'll just basket them. But when they come back, they go into the cock section for, depends how hard the training is or hard the race is, sometimes overnight, but you leave them for about an hour, then you separate them again. So it's simple. People do it here as well, but because I've built this new loft, I've actually built wooden so they can't see each other. So it's important they don't mix too much and just keep it separated for the actual race. It stops the hens going into egg, where if you keep them together, the hens will go, once they've come off the eggs, they'll go back into egg again. So it stops that. Because you've got to race them every week here, you need to keep the hens in condition for racing, and if you let them run together, the hens will go into egg, and you might miss laps, or you'll put pressure on them where the hens just want to lay eggs. So it helps that way, and it's a benefit to the racing here. Widowed is you do waste too many good hens, and you'll find a lot of Europeans, if you watch videos, they're actually racing cocks and hens now on roundabout. The Barcelona pigeons, they get paired up. Majority of them pair them up and send them on small young birds because they've been separated for so long. But you can't do that here because you race week after week after week, and there's only in the south where before the last lap, you might have a 2-week gap. Otherwise, I'd pair them up and set them up just for one race. But it's a simple system. It's a simple system. I do play with the feeding a bit, where at the beginning of the week I'll reduce carbohydrates. It's difficult to get good barley here. What I'm finding is really difficult. And you've got to get clipped barley, and it's got to be good condition. But I do reduce carbohydrates. I won't feed sneaky mix at the beginning of the week, so that they get maybe more protein than I would actually want. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you'll give them all the sneaky mix, all the small seeds. And you should keep them a bit short at the beginning of the week so they don't get fat for the following weekend. What I do find a big difference here is my roundabout hens used to fly for hours. I could let them out and they would fly for 2 hours, and there's a problem getting them back down again. Here, because of the heat, the pigeons want to hide. They don't even land on the loft sometimes. They'll go and land in shade because it's that hot. So I'm having a problem getting them to do loft flying here. Where back home it was dead easy. It was just the pigeons naturally wanted to fly, where here they want to get out in the sun. So it's important you don't let them get too fat. Don't overfeed them at the beginning of the week. Build them up for the end of the week, which is a sort of standard widowhood type of feeding. Pigeon racing is straightforward, doesn't matter what country it is fit, healthy, motivated pigeons. It's keeping them healthy here is what I find is the issue. And that's why I've changed the loft. But when we bought the lot, there was a small house on a caretaker's house. So I converted to a pigeon loft, but it was too much like a European loft. And I had to, I put more windows in it. I actually put extractor fans in it because it just got too hot. And when it rains, the concrete was like sucking up the moisture. So I was having a problem keeping them healthy. That's why I built a loft, and it'll probably go the other way now, and it's a wire loft. I've designed it so it suits more the Philippine climate, which that's the big difference in pigeon racing, is the actual climate.
Bili-bili na, baka mauusan.
Yeah, one of the big difference in clocking here is using your telephone and using the sticker. We've never used that system. They don't use it in Europe. I've been quiet about it because a lot of people think it's a good way to get people into the sport. But I was brought up in where you had a clock, you may have seen them on YouTube as well, where a clock where you got a rubber ring was put on the pigeon, same as a sticker, but it's a rubber ring. You had to take it off, put it in a thimble and strike it, and it printed the time. And we all went down and to the club after a set time and read the clocks. But it must be 25 years ago, 30 years ago, we bought electronic clocking in. And even my dad was old school, he was all for electronic clocking. We had to fight to get it in. A lot of people didn't want to change. The difference between a normal printing clock and an electronic clock wasn't a huge difference, and I appreciate there's a big difference here. But the benefits of electronic clocking is just fantastic. If you've got a good pigeon that you clock every single week, they get scared. They start getting, they start not wanting to trap. They won't go through the bobs, whatever bob wires, whatever system you use. They just get scared. Electronic clocking, they don't know any difference. It's just like getting let out, and they just go straight through. So for good pigeons, they don't get scared. You're not catching them every time. Also, if you have to work, if you actually have to, if the birds were up late or you have to work, if they're held over, you could just set the electronic clock in and it did it for you. So there was no loss of earnings. There wasn't a problem trying to get a stranger to come to your loft and catch them. There's just so many benefits of electronic clocking. If you get more than one pigeon together, it takes so long to get the sticker off. This now, we can get 5 or 6 pigeons together, and I can have them lined up for Carla to scratch them and clock them. All these pigeons we've been clocked, I can lose hundreds of points just because you get too many together. So I'm only talking about maybe sending 18 pigeons, but some have good races and you get 5, 6 together and you can lose hundreds of points in the short distance. For me, it's more fair that everybody gets to clock their pigeon. There is a cost involved. One thing I would say is people find the cost, which is expensive here. It's actually, pigeon racing here is more expensive than the UK. It's actually, for you to race a pigeon in a race is more expensive. Ours, the club races are only pennies. They're not expensive to send. Here it can be expensive, especially in relation to how much you earn. But I understand if an electronic clock here, they've got a limited version, which is what they're talking about 11,000 or whatever for. And it's okay for me saying, yeah, buy them. But people find money to gamble and everything else, which is the Philippine way, isn't it? They like to gamble. So, but it's a way forward. It's just the way forward. You can't turn the clock back and pretend it's not there. And the benefits far outweigh the disadvantages. They could run both systems. They can do electronic and scratching, but if you've only sent 1 or 2, it doesn't make a huge difference. It might make a few seconds difference. It's only if you're sending a reasonable team. but then you're getting disadvantaged because to get a sticker off and to clock pigeons 6, 7 when you get together, it just takes too long.
Yeah, that takes a lot of time.
It does take a lot of time. I can do 3 in a minute. That's about the most we do. Carla, my wife's really good at she does the scanning and I just take the stickers off. I use a still trap. I had different systems here, but I find the still trap the best. We used to use open door when we used to catch them, but the still trap's quite good and you're not catching the pigeons.
All right, let's move on to your bloodlines. Charles, what bloodlines do you keep in your loft?
I made a conscious decision to stick to Philippine pigeons. The heat here, the climate, European pigeons are big. Scottish pigeons are smaller because of our terrain. And we've got more mountains and it's harder. European pigeons, Belgian pigeons are big. And you would have to cross them here and you would have to get them to acclimatized here to actually, I think, to get the best out of them. What I noticed was I was fortunate to go to show pigeons. So I got to handle some of the winners, some of the champions, and they're all the same. They're all small, predominantly dark checker hens actually, the club I was at in Manila. They were all small dark checker hens. They seemed to be predominantly that. There was one medium-sized cock, all the rest were small, which I would class as small. So I'm very, very wary when I arrived here and I got pigeons of people that I like bigger pigeons. But I've learned now, and we talked about this before, Renz, I'm trying to bring down the size. I'm definitely trying to bring down the size. If I'm allowed to say, Arnold Salvador's give me his Maui lines, and they're small, but they're really pretty, but they're the right size. Where I have got some off pigeons off imports, but they're still big. They're still big, you have to cross them to bring down the size. I would say the small local pigeons are much better, they're climatized and they're tough. They have to be tough here. The dehydration, for a big pigeon, because there's no air, because of the humidity, pigeons have to work every single stroke of their flights. They don't get any help. They can't just guide. You know, like if you watch pigeons, they'll fly for a while and then they'll just take a little rest. They can't do that here because they actually start dropping. I think the big difference in Europe here, because the air's lighter and they can actually glide more than they can here. They've got to work for every stroke. They actually have to work really hard, and that's why you won't get the distances here. You know, when it comes down to the last laps, there's less and less and less pigeons. It's really tough. It's really tough here. You can tell by the velocities of the pigeons. It's slower here.
Yeah.
The heat. When they get dehydrated, the bigger pigeons need some more fluid. And they've got to find water quicker than the small pigeon. The small pigeons, there was a difference between pigeons that won 850 kilometers, 500 miles to 600 miles. The 600-mile pigeons are smaller. They're lighter. So I like apple-bodied pigeons, everybody does, but you don't want a heavy pigeon. You want something that feels light in your hand, because to fly all day, they need to be light.
Yeah.
They're like, so, you know, I don't know if you've seen likes of kittles and things like that. Normally they're huge. I've handled a few kittles and they're huge. They're 2-3 times the size of the winners here. So you'd have to cross them. I think there's benefits to use introductions, but you need that smaller pigeon here. Shallow, big pigeons it's not here. I don't see, you know, I've handled lots of champions here and they're small.
What do you do on Wednesdays to Fridays just to make sure that your pigeons are fit for the next race?
Well, think a lot of people here as well, when they come back on a Sunday,